Hello, 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 hello. You're listening to Conscientious Conversation. And I'm your host, Will Prophet. I hope your day is going well. I hope you are getting the most out of your day. And I hope you're not letting any negativity affect your day. So, I want to talk to you about abuse, okay? And the type of abuse I'm talking about is pretty much all around, okay? Whether it's abuse of power, whether it's someone taking advantage of you, or whether you're abusive relationship, whether that abuse is physical, mental, or otherwise. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. And that secret, maybe it's not so much of a secret, but the way I see it is abusers abuse. Okay? And the other part of that is abusers were abused. Okay? So a lot of what you will experience is the fact that you could pretty much bet someone that's abusing you in whatever way that is. Okay? As I said, in whatever way that is, that individual was abused themselves. And so they are a product of that abuse. Whatever kind of abuse we're talking about. So, and it's not even to the point to where just when they're abusing people, they feel good about themselves. It's not just to that point. It's one of these kind of things where they can never get enough, or they can never feel good enough about themselves not to abuse. Whether it's verbally, whether it's, as I said, regardless of how the abuse is. Now, let me put this out there while we're on this subject. Obviously, if you're out there and you're being physically abused, that's one that you can get help for. You're not alone. You're not, you don't have to feel trapped. There are people that will help you. You just have to ask for help. You got to make that first step by asking for help. Okay? So if there's someone in your life, regardless of what age you are, if there's someone in your life abusing you, and you can get help. You can get help. Okay? And so don't be afraid to reach out and get that help. Okay? Now, to the more of what we're talking about right now, of like mental abuse or someone's abuse of power, or verbal abuse, or these things that you kind of, you're going to kind of probably deal with, whether at home or in your workplace or interaction with friends. It's sometimes interesting because sometimes, in friendships evolve with, especially if you're like part of a group or a crew or whatever, that kind of, you got those people that you go out with, and within that group, I always say three or more kind of makes a group. As you start to grow, 3 or more is about where you want to be at as a group. If it's just you and your buddy, or you and your friend hanging out, that's a different story. But most of the time, if you got 3 or more, then that constitutes a group. And so a lot of times in that relationship, you'll have different people in those groups. One of the person will kind of, not so much the leader, but kind of the one that kind of, gets things started, or kind of lead, but the other one, the other ones kind of follow their lead, or make their suggestions. And then that person's the actual person that's the decision maker, so to speak, for the group. or you're going to a concert or you're going to some type of event, and that person would have been the one to get all the tickets sent to their email, or they've been the one to set up the road trip and all the details, the logistical parts of it. But the point I'm trying to make is that abuse is abuse. And regardless if you're go back to the group for a second. A lot of times, if you look at that, you have to be very careful that you're not being dismissed or your opinion's not being discounted or anything like that, because that has a tendency to happen too. And a lot of times, as human beings, we cave on things. We don't stand our ground on things. And so what happens is we allow the abuse to happen because we don't stand our ground. We don't stand our ground. We let someone come in, change our plan, or bully us. Whether bullying is verbally, or bully is with body language, or bullying is just someone actually trying to bully you physically, or trying to intimidate you by the way they stand, the way they lean in, or something like that. You can only be abused if you allow it. You can only become a victim if you allow it. Okay? Your acceptance of any kind of abuse, okay, is usually why it continues. Okay? And a lot of times, especially, I not too long ago, I talked to a group of veterans, and for any other veterans out there, I want to really thank you for your service. You guys are the very reason why we live in a free country. You guys are the very reason why the United States is the United States, and the very reason why we're not in the same turmoil as some other countries. But I talked to a group of veterans, and one of the things that we were talking about is a lot of them sometimes, because they are soldiers and things they did when they were in a soldier capacity, you can't, a lot of times you can't just turn that stuff off. That stuff sticks with you because you are human. And so a lot of them, they'll go through something and feel that they deserve to go through it because of something they did. And so that's kind of how abuse seeps in. That's how abuse tries to justify itself. Oh, you deserve this. You're a bad person, or, you hurt people, or you're not a nice person. And so a lot of times that stuff there is just what it is. It's stuff. And you have to move past the stuff, guys. You have to move past the stuff. You cannot let a moment in time, or even a continuous moment, something that keeps happening to you, you cannot let that dictate your life. You do have the power on any level of abuse. You have the power. Okay? You do. You really do. And again, that abuse starts with asking for help. A lot of times, even in the work capacity, you have a boss that's taking advantage of you, or they're making you work beyond what you should be. Or I even talked to a young lady recently. She said that at her job, her boss always wants her, after she does her 8 hours, her boss wants her to continue to work for 3-4 hours, but off clock. And she's been doing this for so long, it's become somewhat the norm. So there's this 10 to 12 hours a week that she works that she never gets paid for. And that's so that her boss can show his supervisors or his bosses that he's under budget. And so by him showing that he's under budget, that benefits him and like that. But as I said, abusers abuse. I guarantee you, if you go back, this gentleman that she was telling me about, I guarantee you, if you go back, there was a boss that did the very same thing to him. And so it's learned behavior. It's learned behavior. It's just like, a lot of times where, children grow up, and you either have the children that grow up and they're just like their parents, or you have the children that grow up and they're nothing like their parents, or you have the ones that grow up and said they would never be like their parents, and they become that exact thing they say they would never become. And so irregardless, as I said throughout, abuse is abuse. If you're in any kind of abuse, okay, you know when abuse is happening. Some abuse is subtle. Some abuse is very subtle or very, you don't necessarily recognize it right away. Okay, any kind of usury. A lot of times, you don't recognize it right away, especially in the workforce. A lot of times, because you're just doing your job, or especially in relationships. You heard me in the episode before where we talked about, if you're in a relationship of any kind and you feel bad about yourself, you feel bad about what's happening, or you feel bad about the situation, okay, and the other person is happy, the other person is good, and understand the only reason why they're happy is because they're benefiting from the abuse of you. You understand? Whether that's abuse of power and they're getting you to do something you don't want to do by threatening you with, your position, or threatening you with your job, or it's one of those situations to where they know you're trying to prove yourself. And so because you're trying to prove yourself, they're taking advantage of you trying to prove yourself, or it's just flat out, there's an old saying that goes, it's okay when they do it, but there's a problem when you do it. And so it means that double standard, or they see you different. Some abuse is somewhat hidden like that, where there's a double standard, or you can't do what I do. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's, I was talking to a colleague the other day, and that colleague, it was in regards to this individual that owned a business, and they were talking about how owning that business, they were talking about some of the other people that were involved in that business not necessarily pulling their weight, and as I've always said, a lot of times in business, when you get involved in business, everybody's bringing something to the table. Even a lot of times, even if everybody brought equal money to the table, equal investment to the table, you still would have someone that's probably doing more work. If you went down and looked minute by minute or second by second, there's someone in that relationship. There's going to always be someone that kind of takes the reins and maybe be responsible for the day to day. And so another person's going to be more behind the scenes or silent or whatever. But at the end of the day, there are certain perks to a person that is, within that partnership or something like that, a person that might have they put their time in, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? They kind of, where they've already done, or kind of like when, let's say you go to someone and you say, hey, I want to do this, and the person's already done it. I think if you go back, I did an episode where I was talking about a gentleman who he had already started a business, been very successful, ran it for many years. Then he sold the business. And then after he sold the business, he just kind of was living his life. And then as his daughter got older, she showed interest in, oh, wow, I wish you would have never sold that business. That's something that I remember growing up in, and that's something I want to do. And so he went back in and he started the same business over again. He started, but just obviously, now it wasn't as challenging because the technology and things like that had caught up. And so it was definitely not the same kind of business that he ran for those many years. But there are situations where you would have someone that's, within that that's probably already put their time in it, and then they're going to be more motivated than you. And in that instance, you just have to try to find that equalness of, okay, this is what they can do. A lot of times we have the tendency to focus on what a person's not doing, or what a person can't do, or what a person's not doing in our eyesight, and instead of kind of finding it. I even recall the one episode where I was telling you about a colleague that he had a salesperson, and he had a secretary, and the secretary was a great salesperson, and the sales guy was a great organizer, great at keeping track of paperwork and all that. And he flip-flopped those individuals. He took the secretary and turned the secretary into the salesperson, and then he turned the salesperson into his assistant. And his life was never better after that. His life was never better. He said the greatest decision, it was something I had advised him on, and it was a great decision. And still to this day, I talk to this individual, and he tells me that was one of the best decisions he ever had made in business. Simplified his life, made his life less stressful, and all of that. So a lot of times you have to find what an individual, find how you can have that individual help you. Just like you hear me talk about, sometimes you have to show people how to treat you. People are going to treat you, or people are going to treat you a way they think you should be treated, or their idea of you, or whatever. You're going to have some people that necessarily don't think you deserve certain things. Who are they to say? Okay, so you have to, in that situation, it goes back to what you allow. You cannot allow someone to abuse you verbally, emotionally, mentally, physically, sabotage-wise. The old saying, don't let a person gaslight you. Where they're trying to do something manipulative, or trying to make your life harder by sometimes directly in front of you, but then sometimes behind the scenes. So you got to be aware of this. Don't accept abuse. Don't allow abuse. Even if you see abuse happening and it's not directly to you, okay? Just being a good human, if you see abuse happening, you should be willing to stand up against abuse, whether it's happening to you or happening to someone else. Especially, if it's something of a physical nature, and it's happening to someone, that might be vulnerable to where they can't defend themselves or something like that. Remember, abuse is abuse because they were abused at some point. But irregardless, that does not give them the right to abuse you. That does not give them the right to hurt you. That does not give them the right to abuse someone you love. Always try to remember, abuse can only happen as long as you allow it. Abuse can only happen as long as you accept it. A lot of times, abuse is like a bully. Once you stand up against it, you see how weak it is. You see how weak they are. And you're going to be surprised because you're going to say, wow, why did I tolerate this long? Why did I accept this long? Why did I let this go on for this long? As I said, regardless of the kind of abuse you might be experiencing, you can get help. There's someone that can help you. And a lot of times that someone that can help you is not that far off, meaning you have access to that person, you have access, period, not just to that person that can help you. There's a phone number, or there's an email, or there's an individual, or there's a group of individuals, or there's a company, or there's someone that can help you avoid that abuse, not tolerate that abuse, not accept that abuse. Whatever you do right now, today, if you're being abused in any way, stop it. Here now, stop it. Stop it from happening. Stand up against it. Okay? Even if it causes an immediate pain or an immediate uncomfortableness or an immediate challenge. You know, there's someone out there, I don't want to do anything because if I do this, I won't have a place to stay. Or if I do this, I won't have a car to drive. Or if I do this, my situation is going to get worse. Yeah, but believe it or not, to continue to accept something is much, much worse than the inconvenience or the suffering or the uncomfortableness that it temporarily caused. Because that you can overcome it. But to continue to have to compromise yourself or to continue to have to be made to feel bad or be made to feel wrong for the pleasure of someone else, that's worse than anything. And most of all, it's not a way to live. It's not a way to live. It's not what life's about. It's not just the way it is. I don't care what you've done. You don't deserve it. You don't accept it. And you don't succumb to it. So, as I said, if you're facing abuse of any kind of way, there's help you can get. Okay? There is more help than you would imagine and than you would believe. Okay? Talk to someone. Make yourself vulnerable enough to get help. Make yourself strong enough to stand up against it. Because as I said, you'll find how weak it is when you stand up against it, when you don't back down from it, and when you no longer accept it. And as I said, you cannot tolerate it on any level, professional, personal, or business-wise. And understand, there's always a way to handle any situation. And don't get caught up in, one day or sooner or later, or eventually I'll do something about it, or eventually I'll take care of it. Because before you know it, a year's passed, 2 years pass, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or worse yet, you end up never doing anything about it. And you just accept it. It becomes a way of life. And regardless of how it comes, verbally, physically, mentally, emotionally, someone's trying to sabotage you or make you think you're going crazy or make you think that, what's happening is not really happening. Stand up against abuse. Stand up against abusers. Okay? Don't let it happen in your business life, your personal life, your professional life. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be treated with respect. And most of all, you deserve to enjoy your life and have a good life. So, You've been listening to Conscientious Conversation. I'm your host, Will Prophet. Go, go, go. And push through the day and end the day with nothing but success in your day.